This content is being brought to you by the Bourbon Real Talk American Whiskey Aroma Kit. This is a tool that I put together to help all you whiskey aficionados out there develop your palates. You can sit down with the vials and train your senses, or you can sit down with a great dram and break that whiskey down to its components. If you have any interest of purchasing a kit of your own, head on over to bourbonrealtalk.com/shop and pick one up. Thank you for listening. Hey Bourbon Real Talk listeners, Randy Sullivan here, coming to you today with a very special episode. We have Jeff Bradford with us, who is can I call you a YouTube sensation?
No.
I'm going to when you're not around.
It's like you being called a bourbon expert?
Oh, I hate that.
See what I mean?
Yeah,
it's the same. The same.
I'm impressed with you. I didn't know what to expect. So Jeff has a YouTube channel. Go ahead and tell him the name.
It's Beer, Wine, and Spirits. Made it easy for everybody out there that loves either beer, wine, or spirits. So yeah.
And you've come to Texas because you're doing some filming.
Yeah.
Going through the Texas Whiskey Association, Texas Whiskey Trail.
Yep.
Up here in the north end of the trail where I live, and you're doing some filming. So
yep.
I was very excited to get introduced to you. I want to say a big thank you to Spencer for getting us connected.
Yes.
And I did a little bit of a piece for you. So
yeah,
I'm super excited that I'm going to get to see myself on a real YouTube channel.
Yeah.
One day I'm going to grow up and I'm going to have views like you. But until then, I'll just do the best that I can. So.
Oh man, love it, man, love it. I need you as a hype man, to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at this freaking guy. I mean, he's an absolute unit. I opened up the door and I was like, "What is going on?"
Show off, I know.
They sent like this gorilla looking dude. I mean, actually, one of my nicknames.
Lots of whiskey.
Is Vanilla Gorilla. You know what? Most of the super fit dudes that drink a good bit, they drink whiskey. And if you didn't know this, people. Whiskey's sugar-free, it's cholesterol-free, it's fat-free, it's just empty calories. So if you're going to drink, it's the lower, and all that stuff about how vodka is healthier for you, clear spirits, it doesn't make any difference. The coloring just adds flavor, it doesn't add any calories.
Are you one of those guys that just totally hates vodka? Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the biggest amount of trouble I ever got into with my podcast, I released a piece called Vodka and Why It Sucks.
Wow.
Now, I drink vodka, okay? And I always have vodka at the house, so people get the wrong impression. It's not that I don't like vodka. I don't like how vodka is marketed.
Okay.
Because vodka is molecularly identical from one vodka to another because of the way that it's made. Yeah. The definition of vodka until recently was flavorless and odorless, so it didn't matter which vodka you bought. So when a company comes along, and it's almost always somebody who doesn't make it, and they're buying product from somebody else, and then through false advertising, they say, "Oh, this is a premium vodka. This tastes great."
Yeah.
And I was tired of consumers getting ripped off, and so I did a piece, and I told everybody the truth. This is how it's made. There are such minute differences between one and the other that you can't tell, especially when it's mixed.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't be paying a huge premium if you're going to go out and buy vodka. Go buy vodka from some small local producer because that's how they're keeping their doors open while they're producing the spirits that, they really got into the business because they're passionate about, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, I'll always have vodka around, but yeah, vodka and Why It Sucks.
I'm actually getting a T-shirt made that says like "I love Tito's" because I was thinking if I would have walked in the door and you would have saw that, I probably wouldn't even been entered. And one of these days I'm gonna meet Fred Minnick, and I'm gonna wear that T-shirt. And I'm going to just see his reaction. It probably is not going to be good, but I just want to see it.
That's how I got Fred's cell phone number. When I released that episode, someone tagged him.
Yeah.
And then he saw me just, like, getting destroyed. And he PM'd me, and he's like, "Hey, man, like, here's my number if you ever need any help."
Yeah. I definitely hear you.
So yeah, that's how I met Fred. But yeah, so I'm very excited about what you're doing. So you've actually set your life up so that you can travel around and you can learn about spirits, wine, whatever, right?
Yeah, yep.
And so I heard you say you sold everything.
I did. So you could imagine I'm getting ready to retire from the military after 20 years. And again, trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up. And I postured myself very well financially to start a business. I wanted to start something for myself.
Right.
and wrote a list of passions down. And you can imagine, I think beer, wine, and spirits was probably number 5 and 6 on the list. And the reason why I say beer, wine, and spirits, because as I was traveling around through the military, I was stationed in Italy, Germany, with beer, Italy with wine. And every time I would have, this awesome wine in Italy, I looked at the label and was like, who made it, how it was made? Germany, I was drinking beer and a label, and I was like, man, I wonder who makes this, and how it's made. So yeah, when I retired, I said, you know what, I'm going to go travel and I'm going to go do that. I'm going to email breweries, wineries, distilleries, and see if they'll let me come in and learn a little bit about the process. But more importantly, just to learn, make that connection from that bottle that I drank last week in Germany, a beer, and make the connection and see the process, and see, the person that actually made it,
Right.
the brewer. So yeah.
Do you associate a connection with place when you think about like a beer or wine or a spirit?
100%. I think that's part of it, right? I think that's part of the process is the place. I mean, in fact, being here in Texas, we're trying to associate the sense of place with that. And it was fascinating to me because, when I think about Texas, I'm not from Texas. I've lived here for a few months, Addison, and you think the Alamo, you think Cowboys, Texas Longhorns, right? And then you think about whiskey, which I'm telling the story of, and I'm thinking, man, this has such this history, the story behind it, and you start to dig deeper, and you're like, I was a little disappointed, man. Pre-Prohibition, there's nothing
Right.
going on, and again, you associate Cowboys with whiskey, right? And there's nothing. So anyway, going back to, yes, 100%. Place with what you're drinking, and that's something that when I first started, I didn't do good. I wasn't doing well enough, but now that I'm starting to learn a little bit more of how to edit episodes, tell stories, sense of place is probably the foundation of the episodes that I do.
So anybody that I meet that has gotten into spirits in the direction that you have, I've realized that part of the draw is the connection that you have with people, right? And the connections that you make and the experiences that you have. Is there a person that you've met since you've started doing this that it was just a really amazing experience, or they had a really big impact on you?
Man, that's everybody that I've met so far. You know what I mean? I have to tell you which is really great. I mean, my Rolodex is pretty big now with names, and I mean, when I go down to tequila and you meet Fortaleza, you meet this, Sauza, the 5th generation person from that, and you have them on speed dial, and you say, hey man, I'm coming to Jalisco again, and he opens just the doors up for you. I think just everybody that I've met so far up to this point has somehow, I've had that connection to, and biggest thing for me is I'm learning from them, you know what I mean? And it's obviously the first time that I've tried a product, so there is a connection. Here in Texas, I've never had Texas whiskey before, and the first people that I meet is the Iron Root folks, and try this amazing bourbon, right? And there's that connection because now I try bourbon, I will always associate that memory to something like that.
Sure. What about an experience? Because you've traveled all over the place, you've seen beautiful things. Is there an experience that sticks out in your mind?
Oh man, I would tell you, I have to tell you about this. I was in Iceland, and we are talking about, we're making beer over there. And it's funny, Iceland, if you don't know, if you haven't been, the weather changes like crazy. I mean, it's almost like Texas, and it's just the weather's so crazy. It can change from one dynamic to the other. And in Iceland, sunny. We send the drone up. We're getting these beautiful shots. I'm snowmobiling, trying to show the good side of Iceland in terms of what to do there. And all of a sudden, the storm comes in, and our drone just gets wiped out, blown away. And we actually try to go find it. All the locals come and help us, and so that's one experience that I've had. But yeah, there's so many experiences working in South Africa, with the winemakers at the oldest winery there, working at Springbank, making whiskey for the first time with them, and maltsters, by the way, bless their hearts. Those guys are some of the hardest working guys. So there's just so many experiences that I have that I take with me from each and every place that I travel to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people would look at the life that you're building for yourself and being able to travel and drink spirits and all that, and would maybe envy that. Is there a sacrifice, a downside
Yeah.
that you've dealt with?
What I learned from traveling a year is that as human nature, whatever's in our DNA, we need a nest. We need a place that we can go back to, throw our stuff on the ground and just lay in like our own bed. And that's something when I was traveling Europe for the year, not having a place, living out of a suitcase, that I missed the most. And it wears on you. So I see all these people, travel and it's cool and all that stuff, and it is. Don't get me wrong, but when you do it for month in, month out, and you're hitting a year or even more than that, it wears on you. And what I found for myself and what the changes that I made is I need to find a hub. I need to find somewhere. It might not be, in the United States. I might go to Scotland but it's a hub. It's a place that I can, call my own. And those are the changes that I made. But yeah, it's traveling. If you're traveling, biggest thing, laundry. Nobody thinks about that.
Right.
I had to freaking think about that,
Yeah.
Randy. It was so tough. Like, okay, I'm out of my last shirt. All right, now I'd get to the laundromat and I don't have enough change to do the freaking laundry. You know what I mean? So it's one thing after the other. But it's little things like that we don't think about that when you do start to travel. That it does, and it sucks, to be honest with you. Yeah.
What about family life? Do you have wife, kids?
So no kids. Being in the military for 20 years, especially on the special operations side of the house, it's married and divorced. Here's the thing: what I found for myself, really taking a deep dive, being more self-aware, is I found that even in the military, my priority was always work. Mm-hmm. Work was number one. And, unfortunately, where I'm at in my life, that's always been the case. And even getting into this, that I know my priority now is going to be that. So, finding someone, to settle down and understand my lifestyle based on that is pretty difficult. I always say I'm 80% married to my job and 20% single. So,
Right.
But yeah, if I did have kids, or family, this probably would be not happening.
Right,
So,
sure.
yeah.
Sure. So I mentioned it before, you're an absolute unit. I mean, for
Thanks.
the people who are listening and not watching, he's twice as big as me.
No.
At least. So if you're traveling all the time, how do you work out?
It's priorities. Health, if you don't have it, then what do you have?
Right, sure.
And I always think about that. So in my day and what I do, health is the number one priority, and it gets my time every day. And just like you were talking about doing cardio, and finding time for the gym and putting in the, hours, if you will. I wake up in the morning, first thing I do, stretch, go for a run, do some, we've got apps and technology now where I could take Peloton with me wherever I want, and some other apps. But, I just I make sure the first thing when I'm planning out my schedule in a day, health gets my priority, and it gets my time, at least fills up 2 hours. And the big thing is watching what you eat. You know what I mean? Here's the thing: I drink every day. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times it also helps to have a nutrition science degree, which I have. So that helps out. But the biggest stigma is that alcohol makes you fat, or it's like the first thing that nutritionists cut is stop alcohol. And I'm telling people, listen, I drink every day. Mm-hmm. And it's just making the right choices. And it's not like I'm throwing back a whole bottle, stuff like that, but I'm just making the right choices. Right. I'm not eating the, sugary foods and cakes and stuff. I'm eating, the whole foods, the greens, the salads. I'm just making the right choices, especially when I'm on the road, and they're more expensive, but it's there for you. You know what I mean? And fasting never hurts anyway too. So. Yeah. And by the way, empty stomach, whiskey. I've done that a couple times. Again, like you were saying though, it's you're not storing that at all.
Right. Yeah.
So, but anyway, yeah, just making the right choices during travels.
That's interesting. So the thing that gets me the most excited, right? I'm a crier. Okay, cry all the time. I remember making fun of my mom when I was a kid. She was watching this commercial and she started crying. There's a baby in it or something. And me and my brother just started roasting her. And then it happened to me later in life. I saw a commercial, I started crying. And and I asked myself this question, like, what is it that touches me emotionally? And I realize it's human triumph, right?
Interesting.
If I watch like American Idol or something like that, where somebody has a passion that they've worked hard for, and then I see them in their moment of triumph, I'll cry. I cry when I watch the Olympics. I'm not like sobbing,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like I tear up. And so for somebody like you that's lived your life in the military and building your own thing and all that, is there a moment in your life that you can think of where you felt like, I've triumphed? This is I've been fighting for this.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great question because I look at it, I look at the military, and I always, I look at my career. I closed that chapter, and it's something that I look back. I raised my hand every time. I have 20 years. I have 5 years in combat. You know what I mean? And fortunately, I've came back, with hands, leg. You know what I mean? Where a lot of other people haven't.
Not everybody has.
So, and I'm fortunate to close that chapter and move on to that. For me, that's triumph in itself, And then I think mindset, right? Because being able to look at my life and look at the values and principles that I learned from the military and carry it over to something like this in beer, wine, and spirits, and also think about moving forward about legacy, right? Because I look at the military, I almost thought that was my life, and that's all I had to achieve, and that's it, right? That's who I'm gonna be. That's when you talk about me when I'm dying, it's the military, and I'm looking at it now and saying that's just a fraction of
Right.
my life.
Didn't define you.
It
It's
does,
just part of
yeah,
what made you.
exactly, and that's how I look at it, and so for me, making it be, I wanted to be part of the tip of the spear of the Army. I always volunteered. I always challenged myself when I was there. I tried to do every single Army school that that are difficult and challenging, but that was it, right? It was always challenging myself to be better in the military. And again, closing that chapter, knowing that I gave it all, knowing that I led from the front, never asked my soldiers to do anything that I wouldn't do. For me, that's the most important, live by example.
Yeah.
And now I'm trying to do the same thing, right? Again, I sold everything. I have this dream, I have this vision of, being the next Anthony Bourdain of the alcohol industry, right?
Right.
And, and I have a lot of people that call me up and say, man, I can't believe you did that. How did you do that? How did you sell everything? And it's very unconventional, especially at my age, you're not married, but that's what life's about. You know what I mean? It's my own journey. It doesn't have to be like everybody else. It's not a social norm. And I think that's what's important. And I think that's what I can share with other people you don't have to be the social norm. You don't have to be like everybody else. You need to be you. You need to find what you love doing. And believe it or not, you'll live a very, very happy life.
Is that what you hope your legacy will be?
It's funny because I'm pondering my legacy right now. You know what I mean? And my legacy, obviously, the Army's part of that, but that's a foundational. Again, values and principles were definitely built off that. I'm really trying to figure out, especially coming into the alcohol industry. I've only been here, 2 years. Right. You know what I mean? Listening to you talk about bourbon and whiskey is fascinating to me because of all the knowledge that you have. Because again, you're passionate about it, So my thing is listening to you, listening to people, telling stories, so on and so forth. I'm still trying to figure out how I want that legacy to look like. And so, yes, I'm still trying to develop that. So as of right now, yeah.
Well, doing what you're doing, trying to build a following, trying to get views and listeners, and hopefully one day getting the attention of a network and having your own television program, it's not an easy thing to do.
No, and that's the thing, here's the thing. I was in the military. I didn't even know what social media was back 2017, right? All of a sudden now I'm on Instagram having to share what the hell I'm doing every day to the world. That's not easy. But here's the thing. Here's the other thing about that is nobody gives a shit. They just want you to produce good content, and I respect that.
Right.
I'm not here telling that, oh, hey, I don't know how Instagram works because I wasn't on it. No, figure it out, because if you want to build that, you got to figure all that out and again, people don't want to hear your problems. You just need to get, my philosophy is I just need to learn every day, get better at what I'm doing, and my thing is if you make great content, people people will find you. People will eventually find out what you're doing. And that's what I do. I put my head down right now, learning from what I'm doing, getting better at what I'm doing, and again, finding the niche in the alcohol world has definitely helped out, and for people to see what I'm doing in this world.
Have you ever thought about quitting?
Yeah, interesting. Great. Yeah, it's something that I talk about, and I think needs to be talked about more.
Sure. Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is something I learned in the military was suffering.
Right.
And I think as soon as people start to suffer, they tend to quit. They give up. It's too much, mentally, physically, whatever. And one of the things that I'm glad that I learned in the military was I understand suffering.
Right.
So when I first started, when I got one yes for 50 no's at the breweries, wineries, distilleries, I was motivated to do it again. Mm-hmm. In month 8 of getting the same thing and putting out these content, spending lots of money, traveling and putting my heart and soul into something that only got a few views.
Right.
Yeah, it gets into your mind. Hey, why am I doing this?
Yeah, am I
right?
wasting my time?
Why am I wasting my time? But again, it's learning, understanding to be able to suffer, to be able to get through that, and never giving up. And it's so funny because around month 8 or 9 of this, I've only been doing this a little over 2 years. Right about the halfway point. I'm not gonna lie, sounds bad, this is gonna sound bad. I was in Croatia, looking at the beautiful Adriatic Sea, saying, you know what the hell am I doing? I'm not getting results. I maybe have, a few views. I put out all these episodes that I'm very happy about.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They're your babies.
They're my babies, right? And I was like, hey, why am I doing this? I can go sit on a beach. I could spend my money in other ways. I don't have to do this. The negative mindset started to play in, and I told myself from the get-go that, Jeff, give it 3 years. And it's funny because literally about 4 months later, a video popped, and then another video popped.
You ever surprised at which ones hit?
Yeah, it's always the ones that you
don't think, right?
Yes, it's
I've done videos that I'm like, it's a throwaway video, and then I go log in. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what happened? And then I'll interview somebody that's like an epic titan from the industry, and they're like dropping golden nuggets of knowledge the whole time, and no one cares.
Yes.
And I can't figure it out. And so you try to replicate your successes, and you're like, this doesn't make any sense. How can I replicate this?
It's so true. By the way, I'm still trying to figure out the YouTube algorithm and all that stuff. I don't think I ever will.
Yeah.
All I can do is...
And if you did, they'd change it.
Yeah, exactly. All I could do is put out better content than I did last month or last year.
I mean, we're all developing. So what if you had to put your finger on, in this journey, what has been your biggest success?
Biggest success
is
self-awareness.
Okay.
Self-awareness. For example, when I first started, I knew I could storytell, right? I knew when we talk about the Texas episode here, with the whiskey trail, I see it in my head, and being able to identify that and have that evolve over the last 2 years, being self-aware on that, like just being self-aware and just learning and finding out things that I'm good at, digging deeper onto that and finding out, wow, I'm actually better than what I thought I was at that, and just exploring that. But yeah, that's it. Just being more self-aware and I still got a long way to go, with a lot of it, and especially with the storytelling. But I'm excited for what the future holds.
I'm with you, man. I mean, I watch some of my own stuff, and I'm just like, ugh. But it's a passion, so you just keep.
It's hard. I don't like looking at myself. You know what I mean? I'm like, dude, this dude. Who? First of all, you're nasally. You're freaking. You're your own worst critic, dude.
Right.
And so I'm not gonna lie. I thought it was funny when my first episode came out. Second episode, I was so jazzed about it. Looking back 2 years ago, I'm like, yeah, these are the episodes, man. Awesome. These are awesome. What I know now, I'm looking back, I'm like, oh, damn.
And I think that's every content creator.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. Yeah. I got to send you off to your next appointment.
Yeah.
But before we sign off, tell people where to go, how do they find you, what your handles are.
So on YouTube, if you go to YouTube, Beer, Wine, and Spirits, you'll see my videos up there. Please comment, let me know how I'm doing. And on Instagram, you follow my journeys daily on beer_wine_spirits. I do have a website that's in development right now, but it's jeffbeerwinespirits.com. And Facebook, again, Jeff Bradford, Beer, Wine, and Spirits.
Nice, nice. Well, if you want more information about Bourbon Real Talk, you can find us at bourbonrealtalk.com. You can find us on Facebook and YouTube /Bourbon Real Talk. We're also on Instagram, although I don't really understand Instagram, I'm going to be honest. Especially for a podcast, I don't know. I'm doing the best that I can, people. And I always sign off every podcast the same way. I like to encourage people, and I know that sometimes people lack encouragement out there. So if you woke up this morning and you were unsure whether or not anyone loved you, just know that I love you. And I'll see you next time on Bourbon Real Talk.